I arrived at the little village of Straiton. At the entrance to the village is its church, which dates back to 1758. The road climbs steeply into Straiton's main street. At the top of it we find a very attractive village hall, which was built in 1912. It's very much the hub of the community, with its flower-adorned sheltered seating area, which stretches along most of its frontage. I noticed a wee well ahead at the side of the pub, so I decided to check it out. If it was a well at one time, it certainly wasn't one now. The village hall seemed to be a bit of a meeting place, a nice shady spot to stop for a rest on a very warm day. This is what is known as passing the buck. The pavement cafe was shut today, but we used to stop here for a coffee and a snack in our previous visits. The impressive monument on the hill, which towers above the far end of the village, is to commemorate Lieutenant Colonel James Hunter Blair, who died at the Battle of Inkerman in 1854. The Black Bull was built in 1766. It sits in the middle of the village. This was the location of the 1999 movie, The Match, starring Richard E. Grant, Neil Morrissey and Pierce Brosnan. The pub featured greatly in the film, as did the main street here. The pub sits across from where a side road leads off to Dalmellington, and that's where I was heading next. Dalmellington Road is bordered by another attractive little string of whitewashed cottages. Straiton certainly is a very picturesque little village. It's tucked in a valley of the River Girvan, with rolling hills to the north and west. To the east is the peak of Craigengower, the hill where the monument is situated, and ahead, to the south, is the lightly wooded Bennin Hill. But this lovely landscape is continually under threat. The Scottish Government are hell-bent on increasing the number of wind farms in this area. There are currently at least half a dozen in the pipeline, which could have a detrimental impact on this beautiful rural landscape. As I said earlier, the hall here seems to be the hub of the village. It's also the bus stop. Straiton certainly has a lot of character. The arrival of the bus at the village seems to be a completely laid-back event. There is no quick turnaround here. The last time we were here, the driver just stopped the bus and wandered off, returning about 5 minutes later. He seemed to know everybody. The wide main street is very attractive, with single-storey cottages on either side. Flowers are everywhere. Sitting at the far end of the village, where the road branches south to Glentrool and Newton Stewart, is the War Memorial, providing a point of focus to that end of the main street. It was a very warm day. This picturesque little village sits in the water of Girvan, and it dates back to 1760, when the village was laid out by the Earl of Cassillis. It was rebuilt by Sir Edward Hunter Blair in the late 1800s. Their ancestral seat, Loch Doon Castle, was also used in 2006 for the award-winning movie The Queen. Across from the village hall is Straiton Stores, the village shop. It is situated in a converted garage. It is now an excellent example of a cooperative run and stocked by a group of volunteers from the local community. I thoroughly enjoyed my visit to Straiton and made my way back for the car. Loch Doon is about 10 miles southeast of Straiton. A side road leads west from the Castle Douglas Road and winds up into the Galloway Forest Dark Sky Park. The Scottish Dark Sky Observatory, which opened in 2012, has started to attract many tourists to the area. About 2 miles further on, we come to the Loch Doon Dam, which was built in 1935. At the far end of it, we find the attractive Roundhouse Cafe, with an osprey nest nearby. Another 2 miles brings us to the far end of the loch, where we find the reconstruction of a quaint old 13th century castle that once sat in an island in the loch. Loch Doon Castle was built in the 13th century on an island within Loch Doon. It is worth visiting purely for its queer shape. It has 11 sides. The castle was built to fit in with the shape of the island. It formerly enclosed ranges of buildings, including a 16th century tower house. The castle island became submerged when the dam was built, but the outer shell of the castle was dismantled and re-erected about 1935 on the shore near Craigmulloch Farm, where it can still be seen today. When the level of the loch is very low, it's possible to see the top of the castle island and some of the remaining stones of Loch Doon Castle. It is believed that the portcullis gates which protected the castle still lie submerged after being thrown into the loch during an attack. The portcullis arch leads to the courtyard. The courtyard was the lowest part of the castle, allowing access by boat. On the west wall is a fireplace, and in the middle the remains of a spiral staircase. The stonework is outstanding, and its beautifully hewn blocks of ashlar have stood the test of time. A later oblong tower was added in the early 16th century, but it was not removed from the island. I'm disappointed at that. The castle was built by the Bruce Earls of Carrick in the 13th century, and it was captured by the English in 1306. Sir Christopher Straiton, the brother-in-law of Robert the Bruce, was taken prisoner after the siege and later hanged in Dumfries. Throughout the next few centuries, the castle changed hands quite a few times. During the Scottish Wars of Independence, it was held by Sir Gilbert of Carrick, but it was eventually forced to surrender to the English. It was recovered by the forces of Robert the Bruce in 1314. There is a local legend that Loch Doon Castle gave shelter to Robert the Bruce when he was in hiding, as he was often to be found in the surrounding district before becoming king. In 1333 it was one of the 6 strongholds which held out for David II against Edward Balliol, but a couple of years later it was being besieged again. During the 15th century the castle was in the hands of the Kennedy family, but it was taken from them by the Black Douglas after a siege in 1446. The castle island can still be made out in the loch, though with the level of the loch being raised, there's not that much to see now. Before the loch was dammed, there were quite a few small islands in the loch. The castle was eventually returned to the Kennedys, but in 1511 it was taken from them again, this time by William Crawford of Lochmoors. During the siege, the castle was gutted by fire. The castle was restored and reoccupied until it was destroyed later in that century by King James V of Scotland as part of a general policy of reducing the power of the barons of Galloway. In the 1820s, 9 ancient longboats and canoes, one containing an oak war club and a battle axe, were discovered near the old entrance to the castle, and some of the relics can be seen at the Hunterian Museum in Glasgow. These longboats were rudely hewn out of oak. They have been radiocarbon dated to about 600 AD. The original site and the relocated remains are designated as Scheduled Ancient Monuments. A World War II Mark II Spitfire was recovered from the loch in 1982.